I was standing in the parking lot of my own bank when my daughter-in-law told me I was the problem. She did not whisper it. She did not pull me aside with any grace or hesitation. She said it right there, between the automatic doors and the row of shopping carts, loud enough that a woman in a yellow cardigan turned her head. My son was 2 steps behind her, hands in his pockets, eyes on the asphalt. He did not say a single word. I had driven 40 minutes to meet them. They had asked me to come. I remember thinking, as I drove home alone that afternoon, that I had misheard her. I replayed it over and over, the way you replay something that does not make sense, hoping the meaning will shift if you listen closely enough. It never did. She had looked me in the eye and told me that my presence in their lives was making things harder, that I inserted myself too much, that I needed to understand my place. My place. I had written the check for their security deposit. I had co-signed the lease on their first apartment. When my son called me at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night and said they were short on rent, I did not ask questions. I transferred the money before I went to sleep. My name is Eleanor. I am 67 years old. I live in a house I own outright in a small town outside Chattanooga, Tennessee, and for a very long time I believed that loving your family meant showing up without conditions. I was a registered nurse for 31 years. I raised 2 boys mostly on my own after my husband passed from a heart attack when my youngest was 9. I know what it means to be tired. I know what it means to stretch $1 until it nearly tears. I know what it means to keep going anyway, because the people depending on you don't have the option of watching you fall apart. I also know, now, what it means to be used by someone you loved without limit. This is not a story about anger, though I felt plenty of it. This is a story about the morning I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad and a cup of coffee that had gone cold, and I counted. I counted every single payment I had been making on behalf of my son and his wife. Every bill, every subscription, every monthly charge that had somehow, gradually, become my responsibility. The number I reached was 89. 89 separate payments. Some of them I had been making for over 4 years. I sat there for a long time after I wrote that number down. I looked at it the way you look at something you already knew but had been avoiding, confirming. Then I finished my cold coffee, and I made a decision. But I am getting ahead of myself. My son's name is Daniel. He is 38 years old. He works in logistics for a regional supply company and has, by every measure I know of, a stable income. His wife is Tara. She manages a boutique clothing store downtown, the kind with a French word in the name and a chalkboard sign on the sidewalk. She posts pictures of their vacations on social media, beaches in the Carolinas, a ski trip last February, a long weekend in Nashville for her birthday where they stayed at one of those hotels with a rooftop bar. My other son is Marcus. He is 34, lives in Colorado with his partner, and calls me every Sunday without fail. Marcus is not part of this story in the way Daniel is, except to say that Marcus has never once asked me for money. Not because he has never needed it, but because he is the kind of person who figures things out and then tells me about them afterward, laughing a little at himself for how hard it was. I mention him only because it is important to understand that I did not raise 2 sons the same way and get 2 different results by accident. The payments started small. That is always how it starts, I think. It was the car insurance. First, Daniel called me the month after he and Tara got married and said they were having a tight month. Could I cover his car insurance just this once? It was $212. I said yes without hesitating. He was my son. They were newlyweds. I remembered being stretched thin at that age. The next month he did not mention paying me back, and I did not bring it up. 3 months later, he asked if I could add Tara to the plan. She had let hers lapse, he said, just temporarily. I called the insurance company and added her. The monthly total went up by $160. I want to be careful here because I do not want to sound like someone cataloging grievances in order to win an argument. I am telling you this because the architecture of it matters. Because what happened to me did not happen suddenly. It was built slowly, carefully, in a way that made each individual step feel reasonable. Every single request had a logical explanation. Every single time, it was just this once, or just for now, or just until things settle down. Things never settled down. Within 18 months of their wedding, I was paying their car insurance, both cell phone bills, 2 streaming services, a gym membership for Tara, the monthly fee on a storage unit they rented to hold furniture they had bought and then decided they did not like, and the minimum balance on one of Daniel's credit cards that he said he was working on paying off. I was also, every 3 or 4 months, getting a call about rent. Daniel always framed it as a loan. He kept a running total in his head and would reference it occasionally, as if the act of knowing the number was equivalent to having a plan to address it. Once he sent me a text that said, "I know we owe you a lot, and I want you to know I think about it all the time." I saved that text. I thought it meant something. It took me years to understand that some people say, "I know I owe you," as a substitute for actually paying you back, and that the statement is designed to make you feel acknowledged, just enough that you don't push further. I did not push further. I was afraid of what would happen if I did. I was afraid of losing access to my grandchildren. Daniel and Tara had 2 kids by then, a boy and a girl, and those children were the clearest, most uncomplicated joy in my life. I would drive up to Knoxville, where they lived at the time, and spend the weekend doing puzzles with my grandson and reading books to my granddaughter, and I would think, this is what it is all for. This is the whole point. Looking back, I understand now that I allowed that love to be used as a leash. Tara understood it earlier than I did. I do not think she is an evil person, not exactly. I think she is a person who identified a resource and optimized her use of it, the way certain people do without ever fully admitting to themselves what they are doing. She was always polite to me in the way that a person is polite to someone they do not fully respect, warm enough to keep the resource available, cool enough to maintain the upper hand. She never said thank you in a way that sounded like she meant it. She said it the way you say it to a vending machine when your snack drops. The parking lot moment happened in March. It had been building to something for a while, without me fully seeing the shape of it. 3 weeks before that afternoon, Daniel had called me with a new request. They wanted to move. The lease on their apartment was up, and they had found a house to rent, a bigger place with a yard for the kids. The monthly rent was $400 more than what they were currently paying. He wanted to know if I could cover the difference. I asked him, for the first time, a direct question. I said, "Daniel, what is happening with your income? Between the 2 of you, you should be able to cover this." There was a pause. He said Tara had reduced her hours at the store. He said they had some unexpected expenses. He said it was a complicated time. I said I needed to think about it. He called back the next day. Tara called the day after that. She did not yell. She spoke in that particular tone some people use when they want you to understand that your hesitation is the offensive act, not the thing they are asking of you. She said she had thought I wanted to be involved in my grandchildren's lives. She said she had thought family meant something to me. She said that the kids were really excited about having a yard. I said I would help with the deposit. The deposit was $1,400. The week after I sent the money, I was not invited to my grandson's birthday party. Daniel said it was small, just a few of their friends, not really a family event. I found out later from a photo Tara posted that her parents had been there. Her mother, her father, 2 of her siblings, and their children. I was not difficult about it. I did not call and make a scene. I sent my grandson a card with some money inside, and I sat in my kitchen that evening and felt something shift very quietly inside me. Not anger yet, something older and more patient than anger. That was when I started writing things down. I pulled out a legal pad. I have always been a legal pad person, a holdover from 30 years of charting and note-taking, and I started listing every payment I could recall. I went back through my bank statements. I went back through my email. I pulled up my phone and scrolled through years of texts, reading conversations I had half forgotten. I made 3 trips to the kitchen for more coffee and did not finish any of them. By midnight, I had a legal pad with 4 pages of entries. Car insurance, Daniel and Tara, combined $372 per month. Cell phone bill, 2 lines, $180 per month. Storage unit, $70 per month, active for 26 months before they finally cleared it out. Streaming services, $47 combined per month. Gym membership, Tara, $49 per month, which I had been paying for 2 years and 4 months. Minimum payment on Daniel's visa, $110 per month for 19 months, at which point the card had somehow acquired an additional $2,000 in balance, and he had asked me to just make the minimum going forward because he was focused on a different debt. Rent contributions. I went through every transfer, every Venmo, every check I had written. The number I reached for rent alone over 4 years and 2 months was $22,600. Not a loan, not anymore. I had stopped thinking of it as a loan somewhere around year 2 without acknowledging that I had stopped. Security deposit on the first apartment, $1,200. Security deposit on the current place, $1,400, just sent. There were smaller things too. The grocery run I did when Tara had the flu and I showed up with 3 bags of food and they did not offer to pay me back. The new tires for Daniel's car, urgent $840. The plane ticket I bought for them to come to Thanksgiving one year, when they said they could not afford to travel. The kids' school supplies, twice, because Daniel had mentioned offhandedly that things were tight in August. The vet bill when their dog needed surgery, which I paid because my granddaughter cried on the phone and I could not stand the sound of it. Every item had felt justified on its own. Lined up together on 4 pages of yellow legal paper at midnight in my kitchen in Chattanooga, Tennessee, the picture they made was something else entirely. 89 payments. I did not cry. I want to be clear about that, because I think some people would have cried, and I understand why, but what I felt in that moment was not grief exactly. It was more like the feeling of recognizing something that has been true for a long time. The grief had been there already, scattered across 4 years of parking lots and unreturned calls and birthday parties I was not invited to. What I felt at midnight looking at that legal pad was something quieter, a kind of clarity. I closed the legal pad and I put it in the drawer beside the refrigerator. I went to bed. I slept better than I had in months. The next morning, I called my friend Patricia, who had worked in the billing department at the hospital where I used to work and now manages her own finances with the kind of precision that I have always admired. I told her what I had found. I read her some of the entries. There was silence on the line when I finished. She said, "Eleanor, honey, how long have you known?" I said, "I don't know. A while. I think I didn't want to know." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "What are you going to do?" I told her I had an idea. Here is what I decided, and here is why I decided it the way I did. I did not want a confrontation. I had watched enough of my colleagues go through family ruptures to understand that a confrontation would give Daniel and Tara a grievance to focus on. If I called and said, "I know what you've been doing," the conversation would become about my tone, my accusations, my failure to understand their situation. Tara was very good at that particular kind of argument. I had seen her redirect a conversation before. I knew how it went. I also did not want to disappear all at once. Not because I was afraid, but because I wanted them to feel the removal gradually. I wanted them to experience each thing as it was no longer there, one at a time, the way I had lost each thing one at a time without fully noticing. I made a list of all 89 payments in the order I planned to stop them. I started with the ones they were least likely to notice immediately. The streaming services, the storage unit, which they had been meaning to clear out anyway, and now they would have a reason. Tara's gym membership, which she had not used regularly in months, based on the fact that she had complained to me once that she never had time. I did not tell Daniel. I did not tell Tara. I did not send the message or make a call or write an email. I opened my bank's app, or I called the billing number, or I logged into the account and, one by one, I removed myself. I also did two other things that Patricia had suggested. I called my bank and had a conversation about my accounts. I had Daniel listed as a secondary contact on one of my savings accounts from years ago, a holdover from a time when I had thought it was responsible to have someone who could access things if something happened to me. I had that removed. I updated my passwords on everything. I went through every automatic payment and every account that had any connection to Daniel or Tara, and I made sure that the only person who had access to my financial life was me. I also started keeping records. I saved every text. I exported my bank statements going back 5 years and saved the files in 3 places. I was not planning to take legal action. I was a 67-year-old retired nurse, not a plaintiff. But Patricia had told me to document everything, and Patricia is smarter than me about most things practical, so I documented everything. The first call came about 3 weeks in. It was Daniel. He said the gym had sent Tara a notice saying her membership was delinquent. He assumed it was an error. He asked if I had updated my card recently, since he knew I had gotten a new one a few months back. I said the information I had on file was current. He said he would look into it. He said he was sure it was just an administrative mix-up. He did not ask me directly if I had stopped paying. He did not ask because I think the possibility had not fully occurred to him yet. It is a strange and specific kind of blindness, believing that a source of support is structural rather than voluntary, like believing the water comes from the pipe and not from the reservoir behind it. I said I hoped he got it sorted out. 2 weeks after that, it was the storage unit. He called again. The unit was going to auction if they did not pay within 10 days. I could hear Tara in the background. He said they had been meaning to clear it out anyway, but they needed a little time. He asked if I could cover 1 more month. I said I was dealing with some of my own expenses right now, and I was trying to be more careful with my budget. The silence that followed was different from any silence I had gotten from him before. It had a texture to it. I could feel him processing something through it. He said, "Is everything okay with you?" I said, "I'm doing fine, Daniel. I'm just being more thoughtful about money." He said, "Okay." He said he understood. He said he understood. He said they would figure it out. They figured it out by letting everything in the storage unit go to auction. I found this out 3 months later from Marcus, who had heard it mentioned in a phone call with Daniel. Apparently, there had been some furniture in there that Tara had wanted. This upset her more than the monthly fee would have. I held that information and chose not to say anything about it to anyone. The cell phone bills were the next major moment. I had moved those further down the list because I knew they would land harder. But I had not removed them quickly enough because Tara noticed before I had planned for her to. She called me directly. This was a first. Tara had almost never called me directly over the years. Our communication happened through Daniel, or through the children, or through comments on photographs. She was not the kind of person who made direct calls. Her voice was controlled. She said there must have been an issue with my account because their phones had been suspended. I said I had made some changes to my accounts. Yes, she said. Eleanor, what changes? I said. I've been reviewing my finances and I've made some adjustments. You and Daniel are adults with good incomes. I think it's the right time for you to handle your own phone plan. There was a pause. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. Not dramatically, not in a way she would have admitted to, but I had spoken to too many patients through difficult moments to miss the shift. She said she did not understand why I was doing this without any warning. She said it was disruptive. She said the kids' tablets were on that plan and now those were not working either. I said I was sorry for the disruption and that I was confident she could get a new plan set up quickly. I said I thought she was very capable. She said, "This is about the birthday party, isn't it?" I said, "No, I meant it. It was not about the birthday party, not specifically." The birthday party was one point of light in a constellation I had only recently allowed myself to see clearly. I did not say that to Tara. I just said no, and I let the silence sit. She said, "I want to talk to you about all of this. I think we should sit down." I said, "I'd like that. Let me know when you're available." She never followed up. I waited 3 weeks for a date or a time or even a text. Nothing came. Daniel called once more after that, about 6 weeks after the phone conversation with Tara. His voice was quieter than I was used to hearing it. He did not lead with a request this time. He asked how I was doing. He asked about my garden, which I had mentioned to him twice in the past 2 years, without him ever following up before. He asked whether my knee was still giving me trouble. I answered his questions. I asked about the children. He said they were good. He said the boy had joined a soccer league. He said my granddaughter had started reading chapter books by herself. Then he said, "Mom, are we okay?" I took a breath. I said, "I love you, Daniel. I want you to know that we'll never change." He was quiet. I said, "I've spent a long time making sure you were comfortable. I don't regret any of it, but I need to also make sure that I am taken care of. I'm 67 years old. I need to think about my future." He said, "I didn't know it was that much." I said, "I know." He said, "I should have been more aware. I should have." And then he stopped. I heard him exhale. He said, "I'm sorry, Mom." I believed him. I want to be honest about that. I believed my son in that moment because I know the difference between his performing voice and his real one. And that was his real one. I do not think Daniel is a bad person. I think Daniel married someone who was skilled at arranging her life for comfort, and I think he learned, slowly, to accept arrangements that he would never have asked for on his own. I think he had been telling himself a story about loans and intention and temporary situations for so long that he had genuinely stopped seeing the shape of the whole picture. I think the moment he saw it clearly, it landed the way I had hoped it would. He asked if he could bring the kids to visit the following month. I said I would love that. He asked if Tara could come too. I paused. I said, "The kids are always welcome here. Let's take it one step at a time." He said okay. He said he understood. What I did not tell Daniel, because it was not his to carry, was that in the months since I had started removing myself from their finances, I had done a few things for myself that I had been putting off. I had my financial advisor review my retirement accounts and confirm that I was on solid ground for the next 20 years. As long as I stopped making withdrawals, I had not fully accounted for. She had raised an eyebrow at some of the outflows over the past few years, and I had told her that I had been helping family and that I was changing my approach. She had not said anything judgmental. She had just nodded slowly and said, "Good." I had also booked a trip, 10 days in Portugal, with Patricia and another friend named Diane, who had been asking me to take this trip for 2 years and whom I had been putting off because I could never quite justify the expense. I justified it now. I booked a hotel in Lisbon and a small house near the coast for the second week, and I paid for it with money that I had earned over 31 years of night shifts and weekend shifts and staying calm in rooms where other people were falling apart. I also did something small that mattered more than it sounds. I started eating dinner at the table again, with the good dishes, the ones my mother left me, that I had been keeping in the cabinet for occasions. I stopped waiting for occasions. I set the table properly on a random Tuesday, and I ate my dinner, and I sat there afterward with a glass of wine, and I listened to the quiet of my house. It is a good house. It is paid for. It is mine. I am not telling you this story because I believe children should never receive help from their parents. I am telling it because there is a kind of help that functions like love, and a kind that functions like a slow loan of yourself that you never get back. And the difference between them is whether the people receiving it know what it costs you and care. I thought about that for a long time before I understood it. I thought I was being generous. I thought generosity was the same as love, and love meant no conditions, and no conditions meant I should not keep track. And not keeping track meant one day sitting at my kitchen table at midnight, looking at 4 pages of yellow paper that told a different story than the one I had been living in. If you are reading this and something in it is familiar to you, I want to say something clearly. The people who will tell you to live less comfortably so they can live more, those people are counting on you not counting. They are counting on your love being larger than your ledger. And it probably is. Most of us who end up in these situations love deeply and keep track poorly, and that is not a character flaw so much as it is an intention that was never met with equal care. You are allowed to count. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to love your children and refuse to fund a life they built on your quietly breaking back. The month after I had the conversation with Daniel, I received a card in the mail. It was from my granddaughter. She had drawn a picture on the front in crayon, a house with a big sun and two figures standing in front of it, one of them with gray hair that she had pressed hard into the page with a silver crayon so it almost sparkled. Inside she had written, in the large uneven letters of a child who is just learning to make them mean something, 2 words, "I love you." I set it on the counter next to the good dishes. I looked at it for a while. Then I went and put the kettle on, and I stood in my kitchen in my paid-for house in Tennessee, and I let myself feel something I had not let myself feel in a very long time. I felt like I was enough, exactly as I was, without writing a single check to prove it.